So hello, everybody. Today I have Lucas Berg, owner of Talent Acquisition Concepts. Hey, Lucas, welcome to this week's Business Spotlight.
Hi, Kelly. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, really appreciate you taking some time with us today. So let's just get right into some questions. So Lucas, tell us a little bit about what your business does, what you do, and for how long have you been doing it?
I've been in talent acquisition and talent management for longer than I care to say, over 25 years. Started Talent Acquisition Concepts in 2017 with the mission of helping small businesses compete for talent and win at it, maybe before they're ready to have the large scale recruiting budgets that, big businesses are able to put into talent acquisition.
Yeah, and talent acquisition is so critical right now. It's so challenging for businesses. So what is your best or ideal customer?
For us, it's a small, growing business that takes hiring people seriously, right? Where they, the idea that your people are your business, your people are the most important asset in your business is not just lip service in these organizations, right? It's that they have to be willing to make an investment in that. And so, for companies where, they work in the knowledge economy and their personnel really are their differentiator in the marketplace, our services make a lot of sense for them.
Yeah, absolutely. What are you seeing that some of these companies do to retain the great talent that they have?
I think it begins with management and leadership, because kind of as the old adage goes, right? Like people don't quit a job, they quit a manager or they quit a boss, and we find that to be very true. And there's only so much that you can do with money and with benefits. What really differentiates yourself is how you treat your people and the type of work and projects that you pursue, and that you get folks involved in.
Yeah, absolutely. Our process of building a winning team, the very top of it is strong leadership. So the fact that you said leadership is critical, because it is. What has been the biggest impact of COVID-19 to your business and your industry?
Well, we're DC based, and most of our clients are in one way, shape, or form federal contractors. And so, although we've certainly seen a shift in how work works, our clients, for the most part, have continued to need to hire highly talented personnel, again, largely in the knowledge economy. So, with some of our clients, they were already very flexible work environments. We have seen, I think there's been some damage culturally to organizations because of COVID, right? That esprit de corps, right? That gosh, I really dislike using the phrase corporate culture, but right, that team spirit that you have, it's harder to maintain when every interaction has to be a scheduled interaction, right? Everything is a talking head on a screen, right? There's not quite that same warmth, and there's not those incidental interactions where you learn, oh, my kid and your kid play softball in the same league, right? Because we're never going to pause our meeting with 16 other people on it online to have those kinds of sidebar conversations. And I think, if I can wax philosophical for a second, I think folks who are really dug in about wanting to, work remotely 100% of the time, are doing themselves a disservice. This is our modern tribe, right? Beyond our family units now, the only, real team that most of us are part of is our work team. And we lose a big piece of our self-identity when we don't get to interact with that on a regular basis.
Yeah, you mentioned culture, and we feel that culture is super important in any great business, and it needs to be very intentional. So it's much harder to be intentional with culture when you're not together as much. But how much of having a great culture do you see with businesses that you're placing people in? How much does that play into retaining and keeping great employees?
I think your culture and your leadership, right? Like we talked about before, they're not two separate concepts, right? They're one and the same, right? Your leadership sets the tone for who your culture is, and every company, and again, we're clinging to this term culture, but every company has a culture, whether they mean to or not. And you don't control your culture by saying, we're a fun business, right? Well, that's great. But if you're a fun business and then you ask everybody to work 75-hour work weeks and like with no benefits and no perks, and you don't ever do anything, you can say we're fun all you want. It doesn't make it reality, right? So,
Right.
So your culture has to get set from the top, and it's about people living their values and their ideals in their business.
Yeah, great. I mean, I love that because, the culture has to be intentional. Otherwise, it'll just emerge and it might not be the right culture, right? It might not be the culture the business owner wants. So you have to be very intentional about it. And it has to resonate, and people have to live it and hold each other accountable to it. Because let's face it, I mean, would you agree that you can be the best at whatever your job is, but if you're clashing with the culture of an organization, you're not going to make it there, right?
Yeah, and some organizations do that, really well. I cite, Amazon's gotten a lot of heat over having this highly, competitive corporate culture that can be kind of cutthroat, and you can love that or hate it, but it's very much by design and it's very intentional. Even though Jeff Bezos has said it's not, no, we're not a cutthroat culture, but they have this very deliberate competitive culture. The big six, or whatever they're called now, the final four, or whatever, those large consulting firms have been doing that kind of thing for years, right? The up or out mentality. And that works really well for the people that they're trying to groom to grow in their organization. And the ones that don't, self-select out.
Yeah, they know what they know what it is, and they're either with it or they're not. So yeah, absolutely. So what's one of the biggest learnings for you since you've been a business owner?
I think the trick is, at least in my experience, right, is not to get so bogged down doing your job that you don't look for what's next, right? So I see a lot of business owners, and I've fallen into this trap to some extent myself at points, that they get very focused on, hey, we've got a contract, we've got a client, we've got something going on. This is all we can handle right now. We're just going to focus on doing a really good job of this. And don't get me wrong, you got to do right by your current work. But if you're not planning for what comes next, you're going to find yourself at some point where that work comes to an end or slows down or changes. And if you're not working on what's next after next, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, and we see that with like the independent contractors a lot. I mean, contracting is on that up and down cycle. You're right. They got a project, or a consultant, they got a project and they're absorbed in that process, and they don't have any time to look out for what's next. And so when that project's over, it's another several months before they're able to get something else, and that creates some problems. So what have you learned about yourself during your journey as a business owner?
There's some things I do really well, and there's some things that I don't do very well. And I have worked very diligently to be as self-aware about my shortcomings as I am about the things that I do really well. And then I work very deliberately and very hard to surround myself with people who complement those shortcomings, right? Who do the things that I don't do well extraordinarily well. And I joke that everything I needed to know about business, I learned working at Domino's Pizza in high school, where my boss used to say aces in their places, right? You put the people who are good at things in jobs where they get to be good at their job. They're happier, you're more productive, and the business is more successful overall.
Yeah, that's a great point. So, Lucas, what advice would you give to anyone that's thinking of going into business?
I think, first of all, it's the best decision I ever made, right? And I think if you have the drive to do it, because it's not a 9-to-5 job, and it involves fear and risk and hard work. at a level that I think most folks don't want or need to put into their normal day job. But if you have an appetite for those things, if that excites you, if you're ready for it, then my goodness, you have to go after it, and you have to go all the way, right? There's no kind of halfway, with starting your own business, or at least it was not successful for me. I made a couple of aborted attempts to start businesses while I worked for other people, and it just, if you can't put everything you have into it, I don't know that it can be successful.
Right. I would agree with you 100%. People that try to do it on the side or a side hustle, or, it's really a hobby for them. It's not a business, it's until you put everything into it and take that risk, but understanding there's huge payoff and, with that hard work, right?
Yeah,
So
100%.
that is really, really awesome. So Lucas, any offers that you'd like to include in the newsletter?
Oh, gee, I wasn't necessarily prepared for that, but certainly I'll offer what I would offer really to anyone, which is that if someone has got a problem with hiring or with talent acquisition or talent management or retention, and I think a lot of folks are dealing with those kinds of things right now, I'm happy to, have a conversation, and whether or not you ultimately use services from my company or not, I'm happy to impart, a half hour, an hour of my time and experience to help you solve your problems.
Excellent. Well, Lucas, I really appreciate your participating and some great wisdom. I mean, some really great stuff that you talked about. So I really appreciate that. We're going to get this out so other people can learn from you. And so thank you very much.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks very much, Kelly.